All right, so you guys reached the third video. This is exciting. That's why I decided to, like open up the camera. Hopefully, this makes the video like more interesting and engaging to you. I just apologize about the setup. Maybe the camera angle is probably not the best one. I know I should be looking like uh, more this way, but the main screen is this way. So I hope this is not confusing you. So yeah, today we are going to talk mainly about Flutter UI fundamentals. I want to introduce you guys about the like the basic UI components of Flutter, so that we are going to use mostly in the upcoming videos. However, like as I'm always repeating in the videos, Flutter is the framework, right? And Dart is the language. So in order to get yourself introduced to Flutter UI components, you need to get yourself well introduced to Dart concepts. So that's why I'm deciding that today's video will be mainly two parts. The first part or the first half will be probably the important concepts in Dart, uh, just to get yourself well introduced to Dart, and the most challenging part that, in my opinion, I see that if you are not well introduced to these concepts, you're probably not going to have like a smooth experience or learning experience while talking about the fundamentals of Flutter. Then comes the next part, which will be the fundamentals of Flutter or UI Flutter, as we said, and probably we are going to mostly talk about the widget as the main component of everything in Flutter. So I'm very excited to start. I really hope you are too. Let's get started and let's go to the official documentation of Dart. I already shared this link with you guys in the previous video. It's simply dart.dev/language. Um, this will get you introduced to the language itself, Dart. This is the official documentation and it's really very, very helpful. We are definitely not going to, like go in all the details of Dart, guys, because definitely it's not the best way to learn things, right? I mean, the information is there. We can get back to it at any time we want. Maybe a more interesting approach would be to pick up the most important things first and then start applying on Flutter. And then whenever we want to learn something again, we get back to it, learn it, and go apply, and so on. So I'm going to pick up the most important concepts in Dart that, in my opinion, as mentioned, will make the process of learning much easier. In the previous video, we talked about the entry point or the main method. We didn't talk too much about the syntax. First of all, this documentation is very basic and it's very simple. You can see here on the left side is the main pillars or the categories. The language is everything you need to know about the language. This is a general introduction. You can get yourself introduced to the syntax basics, as you can see here, the variables, operators, and blah, blah, blah. What's very important for me to start with is that Dart is an object-oriented language. So if you go to the classes here under the language, classes and objects, you can find that the classes is saying that Dart is an object-oriented language. This is very important. If you're not familiar with OOP or object-oriented programming, you could go maybe and try to search a bit for it to maybe enhance your skills in the OOP if you are not already familiar with it. Otherwise, you can continue. the video, and the whole tutorial is probably meant to give you also some sort of side knowledge. So we're not going to learn only Flutter or only Dart. You are probably going to have some side knowledge about other stuff. But I do recommend you to, like get yourself introduced to the main concepts of object-oriented programming. So for me as a beginner, when I started learning Flutter, one of the most challenging things for me was, like the syntax itself and how the calls of the functions are structured. That's why I want you guys to be introduced to something called the named slash positional parameters. This applies for both classes and methods. Let me introduce you to those things first. So in the functions here, you can see that there is something called parameters, and there are two main concepts here: name parameters and optional parameters. So let me walk you through it quickly in this Dartpad. By the way, Dartpad is an online IDE for Dart. It compiles Dart easily for you. You don't have to have the Flutter SDK or something. You can just play around with it very easily. So I'm going to go to Dartpad and let's refresh our mind with the main method that we wrote in the previous video. It's called main. It must be a void and it doesn't take any parameters. And inside it, you can type the whatever you want to type. And I'm going to say hello world. And this was the first program that we wrote in Dart in the last video, right? Okay, so now I want to talk to you more about named slash or versus positional parameters. This applies for both functions or methods and classes. I just want you to know this, guys, because you are going to face these parameters a lot. And if you're not familiar, you are probably very easily distracted and get lost in the code. So for any method, like for example, the entry point itself is a method, right? It's called name, main. We can create a new method. Let's say void print maybe message, and then let's take a parameter, string parameter as message, and then let's print this parameter. Very simple, right? So instead of saying print hello world, we're just going to use the print message that we just created, and then we run, and it worked. So we didn't do anything, right? So this is called a positional parameter. So message is a positional parameter. Why? Because it depends on the position to identify itself. For example, if I'm going to pass another one, it's called message2, so that we can print the two messages. So we depended on the position to identify the arguments, right? Like this is hello world is the going to be message, and then the message one, sorry, let's just make this more, like declarative. Let's say hello and bye, for example. So now if we click run, so there is an order, right? Because we depended on the position. So hello will be printed first and then bye. Why? Because we depend on the position to determine the order. You cannot say bye first, then hello, and then you expect it to be like printed in the right order. It cannot understand this by itself because you depend on the position. The named parameters is a way to organize your parameters in the method using the name instead of the position. So void print message named, and then let's also here go and pass the things string message 2, and then we're going to just copy paste this because almost the same. There is an error here that this thing needs to be mandatory, so I'm going to add something called required. We're not going to like talk in more details about it right now. Just all what I want you to see that in the first example, we used the positional parameters, and we cannot reorder these parameters because they depend on the exact position and order that you pass them to the function. However, in the second method, since it's using a named parameters, you can pass them in any order because you are going to pass the name with the argument. So instead of just saying hello and bye, no, you are going to specify it, saying, for example, message, and then colon like that, and then hello. And then message 2 will be bye, for example. So if we run this instead of this, let's just clear this here and just click run. You see now it's displaying the text in the right order. Even if you reordered them like this by getting message 2 before message, it doesn't really matter. It will print the same. Why? Because it doesn't depend on the position to identify the arguments. It depends on the name, and that's why simply it's called named parameters, not a positional parameters. This way of invoking the methods, to be honest, was very like confusing for me at the beginning because I didn't have enough information about the positional slash named parameters. So when I saw a large amount of code, having invocation like that, I was very confused about what are these parameters called of, and especially that Flutter is using some kind of tricky format called the trailing comma format that we are going to get subjected to in short time. So this, to be honest, this was actually confusing me more and more. All right, so let's move on. So now we talked about the named and the positional. I just want you to know that you can combine them, right? This, like, for example, let's say print complex. And this is going to be a complex method that is going to have both the positions and name parameters. For example, it could have a string and then say message 1, I'm just called M1, and then string M2, and then a positional parameters of a string M3, and let's say it's required for now. Required, just say that you cannot skip it, like for example, if you get here and then clear this one, you will get an error. Why? Because there is a mandatory or a required parameter and you just skipped it or ignored it, and this cannot happen. So this is what does require me. Also, there is required string M4. So this message here will display them in the right order. So we'll say print M1, and then M2, M3, M4. So this is a like combined or a complex method with it, which takes both positional and named parameters at the same time. So you can call it easily also from here the same way. You just say the print complex and then pass to it. Now you have to follow both rules. You have to follow the positional argument rules. So you have to position your first two arguments correctly without any reordering, like this, like for example M1, and then you must have M2 right after it. And then for the remaining parameters, you are free to call them right away in this order. like the correct order, or you can even, if we try this, it's saying M1, M2, M3, M4, or even you can switch them or swap them like this. Still, you will get the correct results because the second type of arguments are named arguments. They are not depending on the positions. So I'm pretty sure I didn't explain it better than what you already see here. I'm sure that you guys definitely could go and read this, and you will get a lot of information already with very good examples. I'm just giving you, like, putting you on the beginning, and you just could kick off and go read this by yourself and read the examples and take the exercises and something like this. So this is by far the most important, like, difference, or what could you say, maybe yeah, characteristic of Dart code. When you see a large block of Dart code, it will be full of these things together and written to be more specific in this exact format. You see, it will be exactly like this. So you will find some, like, methods here, and then you will find arguments. Some of them are just normal arguments. Some of them will be like prefixed by these columns, and you will not understand. Like, this is what happened with me. Like, what is this code doing exactly? So that's why I wanted you guys to be introduced to this concept. It's the exact same concept with the classes constructors. When you create a new class, let's say it's called class my class. Let's reorder this. So when you create a new class, there is something in the class called constructor. Of course, if you are familiar with OOP, you are going to understand it and be familiar with it. Constructors are considered normal methods. However, they are executed at the very beginning of the initialization of the class. So since constructors are normal methods, as we said, also the same rules apply. So the constructors as normal methods could take positional parameters like this, or could take named parameters like this, or could take a combination of normal or positional or named parameters at the same time. So this will make, for example, the class to be called the same way as the method, exactly like this. So for example, let's say string m1, and then let's take string m2. So this class is going to be called like that: var class equal my class, and I'm going to pass the arguments to the constructor the same way we pass it to the methods. For M1, I'm going to pass M1, and for M2, I'm going to say M2 column M2. That's it. And also with the same tricky format, we are going to reorder it to be like that. Yeah, like this is the typical class invocation or method invocation in Dart generally. I hope this gave you guys like a good kickoff or starting point for this topic, the names versus positional parameters. I think because now we are getting almost 20 minutes, I think that we are going to split this video into half, but let's continue maybe with the classes and the inheritance. And this will be like the second topic that I want to talk about, which is the inheritance in the classes and how to extend an existing class. So again, if you're not familiar with polymorphism as a concept in programming, I strongly recommend that you guys go and Google polymorphism slash inheritance in OOP. I'm going to type it here for you to be more clear. So it's polymorphism and inheritance. in OOP. So this is the title that you guys need to learn about. I'm going to mention all these details in the video description. If you go and then search about it, you will find great tutorials and resources out there. Maybe, of course, Geeks for Geeks is very good resource. But you can learn it from anywhere. Tutorials Point is also an excellent resource for learning anything. So I recommend you guys to go and read a bit about it because we are going to use it in almost every single class. We're not going to like expose to it a lot or maybe use it a lot in the UI because it's more related to the modeling and creating classes and creating the back end stuff. But in UI or front end thing, we're not going to use it a lot, but we are going to use it, and you need to understand it just to understand how things work. And for me, this is a very good practice to always understand everything on the screen. If you guys really want to be perfect at programming something, you shouldn't say like, yeah, this part I don't understand it, so I'm going to skip it. Try to understand as much as possible everything that you see. Try to question a lot. So anyways, the extension or extending a class is of course belongs to the polymorphism topic and the inheritance. So here's a basic example of a class called television, and then you see it has a method and it's called turn on. But there is another class called smart television, which extends from this television. And since it's a child class, it can like override or modify the base class called turn on. So for example, after calling the super to turn on or calling the base method, it still can like modify on the functionality. This is called like overriding. Also, you can override something. You can use the override annotation to indicate that you are intentionally overriding a member in the class. And this thing, we're going to use it a lot with the widgets because everything is a widget in Flutter, and we are going to extend the widgets and override its behavior. So it's very important to get yourself introduced to the extension in classes. I think it's much better now to split this into half. So I'm going to leave it here as part one, and maybe we can continue in the next part to continue introduction to the fundamentals UI and Flutter. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Stay well and see you very soon.